Morning, everybody. Good morning. Hello. All right, we're on. We're in a season in our church where we're sensing that there's a next, and we're on the verge, we're on a threshold of something, and so we're doing what many organizations do, strategic planning. It's good. Raise your hand if you've ever done like strategic planning for any organization or anything. Okay. And there's like the Sharpies and the Post-it notes and all that stuff that's going on. And we're on the verge of that ourselves because we think that we're at a moment in our history where there's like a next era coming, and we want to be prayerful and thoughtful about what that next era is. And so we're doing some strategic planning. Some of our leaders have already done this, staff, elders, our church council, getting ready for November 5th. We'll talk about that later, but we want our whole church to gather as many as possible on November 5th. But some of our leadership has done that already. If I have a picture of some of that, if we could go to the picture. Anybody recognize Chris Lang there? Okay, Chris Lang isn't here. He's usually sitting over here. I was going to make fun of him. But this happened, I guess it was last week, Monday. We did sort of a trial run of initial prayer and discussion. And Chris looks like he's kind of holding court there at that table. Deep discussion and strategic planning. You see the Post-it notes and Sharpies. And our facilitator even had like little fidgets and stuff. So get ready for that. We might have fidgets on November 5th as well. Now, when strategic planning happens, a lot of times there are questions of what. What are we going to do next? What are we going to build? What program are we going to start? What thing are we going to execute? What plan are we going to do? What staff do we need? What resources do we need? And a lot of times it's the question of what. And so today, my thesis is, what I want you to hear today as we prepare for this, what I want you to hear is who over what. That who is more important than what. People over programs and plans and policies. Who over what. Many of you know loved and sent are big words for our church. Why are they important? Because they tell us who we are. And it's important for us to know who we are before we know what to do or before we decide what to do. And we believe that when you know who you are, when you're grounded in that, it helps you make decisions easier. This is true in your personal life. When you know who you are, that you are the beloved of God in Jesus Christ. When Hannah knows, I am a daughter of the King, claimed by him in baptism, and now he has sent me on a purpose. He's given me an important mission to do. That helps her make decisions in her life. It's a compass and a guide, who we are. And it's the same thing as we talk about being church together. It's important for us to start with who before what. So today, just really simple message today, who before what. You might walk out of here and be like, I don't remember anything else he said, but just remember who before what. And I just want to show you a few pictures today of what that looks like to kind of frame your mind and prepare you as you pray and as you participate in who God is calling us to be and what He's calling us to do. So this is sort of a recalibrating moment to get us ready for the next couple of weeks. Who before what? You see here, this is a picture of who. I want to show you who. This is Greg and Sarah Poppets with their kids, Edward, Emma, and Olivia. And this was taken at our Unified Worship on October 1st. Raise your hand if you were at Unified Worship. Okay, many of you were there. We had one service, one place, one time, our whole church. And they were there. Now, they are not members of our church anymore, technically. But Greg and Sarah were foundational. This, in some ways, Reliant wouldn't exist without Greg and Sarah Poppets. Along with Greg and Sarah, there are today, I can count maybe 4 people in this room who were here on day 1. And that's a beautiful thing because that means that this is a dynamic community. And we have sent a lot of people, including Greg and Sarah. Greg and Sarah started, before they were even married, they were part of a young adult Bible study in like 2006-ish. And that's what kind of was the foundation of this community. And then 10 or 12 years ago, they were sent. We sent them Sarah to teach at Word of Life Lutheran School, the southwest part of our city, and them as a family to Timothy Lutheran Church. And that was hard. It was tearful. They are dear friends. I wasn't just their pastor. We were close friends, and our close friends were godparents to each other's kids. And so that was ascending with tears. Sometimes there's people, I don't want to put this on you, but sometimes there's people that you're like, well, maybe we should send you. Hey, I think God is telling us to send you over here. And no, we don't do that to anybody. But this is like people that you don't want to send, and we sent them. But they came to our unified worship, and at unified worship we started talking about Little Antioch. Okay, what does Little Antioch? Antioch, the first century church in Antioch, was a loved and sent church, the cradle of Christianity, the harbor and the hub and headquarters of the Gentile mission. Paul's missionary journeys all go out of Antioch. And we're looking at Antioch. Could we be a little Antioch? There's something about that church that has something for us to say today. And as we're asking who before what, we're saying who were they and who does that say we are? And then we can say what do we need to do next? And as I talked about Little Antioch, Greg came up to me after worship and he said, hey, I think we already are a little Antioch. Okay, let me repeat that again. Greg Poppets said, I think we already are a little Antioch. I had to process that the next day. 2 reasons. One, he said we. They're not technically members of our church anymore, but he said we. We're part of something bigger that crosses zip codes and church lines. We and us. There's a bigger movement happening here. And second, he said, we are already a little Antioch. And they are evidence of that. We've already, in some ways, been this particular people who are grounded in the gospel and sending from that gospel. And in some ways, we're already a little Antioch, but we're figuring out how to grow into that. It's like a shoe that we don't quite fit in yet, but we're wearing it, but we're growing into it a little bit more. So who before what? Who are we? Who is God calling us to be? What kind of people does He want us to be? And then what are we supposed to do with that? Greg and Sarah Poppins. Who before what? Who before what? Next picture. We had our Love Sent Servant event on October 7th, and it's like a one-day mini mission trip. We send people all over the city. This was the group I was with. We were at Jefferson Avenue Mission on South Jefferson, a church plant that we're walking with. And when I looked at this picture, I realized there are 4 different communities represented here, 4 different churches really represented, different age groups. We've got some kids and we've got some senior citizens that serve together. And we made a big impact. Pastor Jordy was so excited that in a morning we could just kind of change their space. And then that afternoon they had a community event, like an open house for their community. So our cleaning and painting and yard work that morning helped them open their doors to their community that afternoon. And when I look at this picture, I think of Acts 11:26. We talked about this on Unified Worship. It says, in Antioch, the disciples were first called Christians. And if you remember, we talked about that Antioch didn't know what to make of these Christians because they were crossing lines of language, ethnicity, color, background, age, and all of a sudden, these Christians were treating each other as family. And they're like, nobody does that. The Greeks stay over here, the Jews stay over here, the Africans stay over here, but now they were treating each other like one people, and they didn't have a word for them, so they called them Christians, which means little Christ. And remember, in the book of Acts, Christians don't call themselves Christians. They call themselves disciples, brother or sister. Only non-Christians called Christians Christians, which means that it was a new label to describe these Christ people who defy logic. And I look at this picture in a small way, and I look at you also right now, my vision of you. If I could take a selfie right now and show you. Like this, there's really no reason that some of you should be here, save Jesus Christ. Save that you still have the same label, little Christ. It's the only thing that unites us. And I think in St. Louis, we talked about this at Unified Worship, we're such a tribal city the church should push back with radical unity. Little Antioch did that. The church in Antioch had this radical unity. And our church has a spirit of that. How do we continue to grow into that? To hold together when we're pulling apart, when we're different than each other. Unity requires sacrifice. It's not easy. Is this being live streamed right now upstairs? I hope nobody watches. Okay, I'm going to share this. Okay, don't tell any. This is like confidential. Okay? Yeah, I'm going to share it anyway. There's somebody in our church, South County campus, who came to Pastor Paul and I, and he's like, hey, little Antioch, I'm thinking about, they live in Millstadt, Illinois, but they're part of our church. And he's like, there's a Baptist church in our little small southern Illinois town that closed down, and I think we should buy it. And that we should, he said, I'll even buy it. And then we should start a ministry there, and that's like our next site. Okay, now I'm telling you, I don't know if that's going to happen, so that's why I'm careful. Whatever, just the fact that it does or doesn't happen doesn't matter. Here's the point. What if our church had an urban community, suburban, and then a rural community? That would be radical unity. And how do you hold together like a church that says we're one in these radically different places with radically different people? Only by the label of Jesus Christ. I look at this picture, I look at you, I get a little picture of little Antioch. People that are together that sociologically shouldn't be. Only the label of Jesus Christ. Who before what? Who before what? Next picture. The next picture is a little small group in our cohort of what we call the Harbor. It's a leadership school, kind of, a leadership program for young leaders that we're doing with some of our alliance churches. These are churches we're partnering with, 12 churches. 7 churches are participating in this with 12 young leaders. And these are a few of the young leaders. And when I look at this picture, I get a glimpse of unity. We just talked about that. But there's something else in this picture. These young leaders, they're in their late teens or early 20s. These young leaders are discovering Christian community. I want to go back to Antioch. Hear me out. This is Acts 11:26. Saul, Barnabas, they were together, and then it says, for a whole year they met with the church and taught a great many people. For a whole year they met with the church. Okay, this is a little detail that I find really interesting. Luke is writing the book of Acts, and he doesn't call Saul Paul. He still refers to him as Saul. Now, he had his conversion experience on the road to Damascus when he was Saul, but he's not yet Paul. And I wonder if Luke saw Saul as still going through conversion of sorts. So that before Paul was sent on his missionary journeys, he spent a year as Saul in the Antioch church. Antioch was Saul's first Christian church, his first experience of the gospel in a community. It was Antioch for a whole year. He didn't just go out on his missionary, he spent a year in a community. And think about Saul, the enemy of the church, the adversary of Jesus, converted, and the Christians in Antioch still took him in. They welcomed him. We have no indication that they shunned him. They had every reason to. He was a threat to them, but he belonged and was welcomed. When I look at especially our young people, and some of our young people today, they're hungering for a place to belong. Will we welcome outsiders in? Will we be a people, a who welcomes people who maybe haven't fit before? And I look at our young people, they're just craving to fit in the church. To be known as Johan or Michael or Kathy. And to find a way into a deep Christian community. And our young leaders are starting to do that the program, and I'm excited about it. Next picture. This is our African ministry on Sunday nights. It's Pastor Nathan, just killing it with our African youth. We get 25, 30 kids every Sunday night in our African youth ministry. And they're in this weird, we've talked about it before maybe, they're in the 1.5 generation. So they came to the United States as young kids, so they're sandwiched in between two cultures. They go home, their parents speak their native language, and they have that culture. But then they go to school, or they go out on the street, and it's English and it's American culture, and these kids feel stuck in between. They're the 1.5 generation, sandwiched in between. And that's why this ministry is really important for us, because we want to make them feel like they belong. When they don't belong anywhere else, where they feel like they don't fit, they belong here. They belong to Christ. And so Antioch had a spirit that welcomed, drew people in. For a whole year they met, Christian community before sending. Can we be this kind of people? Who before what? Are we a kind of people who can welcome in an outsider or someone who doesn't fit? Do they feel home when they're here? Not even in this space, but with this people. Are you kind of a home for other people? That was Antioch, and that's us. Who before what? Who before what? Just some pictures today to frame your prayers and your thinking about your church and who we are as a little Antioch and who we're called to be. Who before what? I want you to remember that phrase as we think about church and the future of our church. Remember that phrase, who before what? And remember the great who before anything else, before there's any what. Before you can do anything or prove anything, before you do any work or come up with any strategic plan, the great who, Jesus Christ, is the senior pastor of the church. Just remember that. He's the head bishop, the president, over every prime minister and president. He's the head of this body, the great who. He's taken you when you didn't deserve it, when you didn't earn it. He's put you in a community called the church by the waters of baptism. You belong here. You are loved more than you can imagine. You don't even know how deeply the Father's love runs for you. And you're sent with great purpose, more than you know, too. Really important things that God has called you to do and no one else. And same for our church. He's sending us uniquely in our community. And so remember the great who. Who before what? Amen.